So we were probably in, I would say I was probably in third grade. It was definitely elementary school. But me and my brother, growing up in the house that we grew up on, it was, there was some woods behind it. There was some woods in front of it. And so, in our free time, we would go around and we would climb trees, try to shoot squirrels, things like that. But there was a few trees in particular that were just really good for climbing. Kind of some of those, you're driving down the road, you see a live oak off to the side, you're like, man, that looks like a climber. There was a couple of those. And so we had kind of formed this, obviously we were brothers, so it was a brotherhood, but we would go out to these trees and we had named them for different locations. So you would think, these kids, they're coming up with names for these trees. So, if something bad happens, we'll rally, a rally point will be here. And you would think we would have like cool names for the trees. Like this one is Dark Knight. This one is, Purple Saturn, something like that. But not us. We were much, much more clever than that. We had secret tree number 1. We had secret tree number 2. We had secret tree number 3. And there towards the end, we had secret tree number 4. But of all of these trees, secret tree number 1 was just the absolute best. It had the lowest limbs, so you could climb for a good time, but it also stretched up high. So if you wanted to get up, test your limits a little bit, you could get pretty high up in this tree. And so, we kind of relished the idea of going out there and living off the land and things like that. So over the summer, we would get some Capri Suns and, we would get out there and take one of the shovels from the shed and we would dig a hole and we would bury the Capri Suns. We're like, look, cellars, people leave liquids in cellars all the time. It's basically like a refrigerator. Granted, we're only burying this thing like a foot deep, right? So we buried the Capri Suns and we're like, all right, these things will last a good while. So we go back there. I don't really think we ever left them in the ground longer than like a day or two. But we would come back and drink them, and they were fine because, there's so much sugar in them. I don't even think they have to be refrigerated. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. But we thought we were doing something cool. We really did. And then one day I looked at Trevor and I was like, man, you know how fun it would be to really kind of feel like we're living off the land? And he was like, yeah, I totally agree. How can we get ourselves that much closer with nature? And I said, really, I think going to the bathroom out here is the only thing that can get us closer, because we're already up in the trees swinging around. Our hands are tore up from the bark. And so we kind of designated this little spot and we got the shovel, we dug a hole, and I relieved myself out there. And, we used to urinate out in the woods all the time, so that wasn't that big of a deal. But this one was a number 2. And I did it out there, and as a symbolic gesture to show our unity with secret tree number 1, I used the leaves from secret tree number 1. But if you know anything about live oaks, white oaks, red oaks, any oak of any sort, they don't have the biggest leaves. So we're talking a leaf that's maybe 1.5 by 1/2 inch. So after I'd relieved myself, it's essentially just I grab a cluster of dead leaves off the ground and try to wipe myself. And I felt like a mountain man, dude. I felt like an absolute beast. No doubt my rear end was probably dirtier after I wiped than before. But somewhere out there on Jay's Way, there's a tree, unless it's been cut down, with probably some fecal matter that's buried down in there. No doubt it's biodegraded by now, but there's also probably some dang Capri Suns buried down there. We're like a bunch of squirrels. We go through, we bury our nut, forget where it's at, and it's still down there to this day. So, that's just a little window into my childhood and what we used to do out there in the woods. Looking back, it sounds like we were kind of feral, but look, it was honestly so much fun. It really was.
Yeah, I'm wondering what color your fingernails were after you finished, because sometimes I hear urban legend says that when you miss with the toilet paper, or in your case leaves, and your fingers get like let's call it a side swipe, and then it's just a little oopsie. Well, I hear that dirt / excretion holds with you for quite some time under your fingernails. And so I would just be curious, when you walked back in your home or treehouse, depending on what part of the land you were living on, what that smell was like, If you put any sniffers to your fingernails?
I really don't remember that part. It was probably on my list of concerns and priorities. That was probably at the very bottom, to be frank with you. So I really don't have an answer for you. I'd like to think that I made had a good wad of dead leaves, but there's really no telling. And I will say, I wouldn't really call it a tree house. There wasn't any sort of construction materials involved in this tree. It was strictly climbing. There were some other instances where we'd get a hammer, get some long, maybe 3.5-inch nails, and nail them, every 2 feet for a handhold or a foothold or something. But this particular tree was, the Lord designed it for climbing. So there was no need for any of that.
Hey, well, praise God for the Lord and his creativity. And I'm not so certain that there isn't a person who lives on Jay's Way listening to this podcast that could go check this out for us. So listeners, if you live on Jay's Way, go into Brett's old house backyard and start digging, looking for fecal matter and Capri Sun, and let us know what you find.
And when you find one, the other will not be far off. I would say within a radius of 10, 15 feet max, but probably closer than that.
Yeah, I love it. Did you eat any nuts from the oak tree?
I did not. Oak trees, they produce, I guess you could call it nuts. Some people call them acorns. Some people call them acorns.
Acorns?
I didn't eat any acorns out of this particular tree, but I've tasted them a time or two. I've wondered, the squirrels love them. There's got to be something to it, right? But the squirrels, they also munch on deer antlers that you leave out in the yard, stuff like that for the calcium. So they can be a little wacky.
Yeah. I can't say I leave deer antlers out in the yard, but I also can't say I climbed tree 1 and then pooped in my backyard and used tree 1's leaves.
Secret tree number 1.
Secret tree number 1, my apologies. That was pretty dishonorable of me, and I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. One thing that I'm really, I love talking about, climbing trees, taking dumps, eating acorns, but I'd love to hear what you did this past week. Probably even more than that. But probably not.
I'd love to tell you. Well, we were together Thursday through Sunday, and so I'll let you kind of share some of that, but I'll tell you, my Monday through Thursday morning, it was jam-packed. Monday, of course, kicks off the day with work, and we're just grinding through some things. We're grinding. Listeners, I just yawned. Listeners, I'm sorry. I'm not bored of this conversation, but Brett will get into details of what all we have done together this weekend, and that might inform you as to why I may be yawning right now. Anyway, back to Monday. Tuesday's another life group day, so I'm studying, preparing for the lesson of Malachi to Monday night, finalizing some of those details. Tuesday rolls around. Well, life group, of course. We're in Malachi, like we just discussed. We talked about, here's the question we really posed. I'm sorry. This is not
so
good.
Many yawns. Unbelievable.
That was two.
Our listeners are driving to work at 5 a.m. right now. They're falling asleep, crashing, dude.
Yeah. I'm sorry. But we specifically asked the question, is your relationship with Jesus costly? Is it costly? And I think the correct answer is sometimes, right? No one, if they say, yes, it is, I might say you're lying. Because no one's perfect except Christ. And so, is our relationship with Jesus costly? Is there stuff that we would rather do that we don't do because of what Jesus has done for us? And so we had a pretty solid discussion on that, and you can dive into Malachi 3 or Malachi 2 actually, Malachi 2, and discuss that more and study it more. But again, I'm sorry, that's pretty unbelievable. But that actually takes me into Wednesday, because Wednesday I got to ride with Jacob Kling. And if anybody knows Jacob Kling, you know he's a great guy. You also know he's mentioned in the song Costco Christmas, dodging balls like I'm Jay Kling. And that is in reference to Zombie Dodgeball and not anything else. And we went to the store and bought some school supplies for foster families in the Gainesville area. And that was just an absolute hoot. Wednesday evening, I visited the hospital. And I won't say that's a hoot, but it's something I don't do often. I'll tell you that much. But it was good. It was good. Thursday morning, I gather with my good friend Ryan Mert. 6 a.m., Starbucks. We study Malachi chapter 3, and we write a Bible lesson on it together. And that's the first time we've done that with one another, and I'll be quite honest with you, it was incredibly fulfilling, and it was fun. Fun and fulfilling is how I would call it. And I went to work. Oh, I've left out some pretty major details. Wednesday, I go to the dermatologist. This is too much information for our listeners, but I'll still share it because
Do it.
I want it to be a community of vulnerability. Because when takes me back straight back to Tuesday, is our relationship with Jesus costly? What is costly? Humility. Humility is costly, and to be vulnerable requires humility. And in which case, I am trying to exemplify right now. I'm not the greatest at it, but I'm trying to improve. Well, I went to the dermatologist and I had 2 surgeries on my neck and back. And let me tell you what they did. They got a screwdriver of sorts. They opened up my back. They tried to remove the proverbial gunk in my body ailments, and the screwdriver was not working. So here's what they did. They said, "You're going to feel some pressure." And they pushed, and it popped. I was numbed. So I didn't feel much. And I didn't see anything because I was on my tummy. But let me just tell you, I was compromised. They could have pretty much done anything to me, and I couldn't have done anything about it. I mean, they had 2 people holding me down. They had me numbed in the back. They were talking, and I was just sitting there or laying there. I was like, y'all are the professionals. Do what you want.
Sounds like a Civil War amputation. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I mean, Brett has dressed my wounds for the past few days, and it's no clearance dressing. You know, I didn't go to the Dillard's clearance outlet and go buy a little dress. You know, this is the Lily Pulitzers of the world. I think that's a pretty well-known dress brand, but
Floral,
to even go
very floral,
yeah. And Brett's a floral guy, and so I asked him. I said, "What is your desired dressing of me?" And he said, "Floral." And so that's what he did, and I appreciate him for that. Well, Thursday rolls around, and if we recall our time on the beach, whenever we shut off the fireworks and may have set some things on fire, my knee was already messed up, but I think I messed it up even more when I started sprinting toward Portofino in an attempt to outrun the law. Well, my return to Gainesville has been it hasn't been as smoothly as I would have hoped. You know, I desire to get out on the ground, start running, walking, playing basketball, all sports at all times, freedom to do so. But that can't happen when you have a bad knee. You have to be really careful. And I shared about my knee problems last week. Well, this past Thursday afternoon, I go to the Orthopedic Institute on Newberry Road. And they check out my knee. They x-ray my knee, my left knee. And you want to know what they found?
What did they find?
There is a fracture in my knee. My knee is fractured. But that's not the problem, because they walked in, they said, "Did you have any knee trouble when you were younger?" And I said, "Yes, I had Oshkosh-Slaughters." Commonly, the street word is jumper's knee. Lots of basketball players get it. So whenever you're growing and playing basketball, like I was in my youth, my cartilage grows faster than my actual bone. So it creates this bump in the knee, and it creates the bone rubbing up on the cartilage. And it's actually quite painful. It really is. So I went to the doctor for that way back when. Well, turns out my knee is fractured now. And that could have been a cause of that. That's not
And
the actual. Yeah, go for it.
no, I was just going to ask if that was due to the Oshkosh sliders.
Yeah. Yes, that is the thinking. So that's not actually the problem with my knee. They are actually thinking that it is a meniscus or an IT band problem, which of course requires an MRI. And so I'm being scheduled for an MRI, and I'll either have physical therapy, which you know I love, and that's actually not sarcasm for our listeners who don't know. Physical therapy was actually also mental therapy to a certain extent for me way back when I sprained my ankle. It's a reprieve of sorts, the physical activity. And the other option, of course, depending on what the MRI shows up, is surgery. And I don't really desire to have surgery. I won't lie to you. And I just want to be vulnerable in that as well. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my body has some serious ailments at the age I am right now. And it's a lesson in the need to rest, because as I've previously spoken, I like to be doing things at all times, active. Well, if you can't rest, and if you don't rest, you're going to be forced to rest at some point. And the way you're forced to rest is not something that you desire, I promise you that. And so that's my word of advice. You must rest, whether you desire it or not. Rest will allow you to achieve more, believe it or not.
Rest will find you, whether you want it or not.
That's a fact. That is a fact. And then after that, I headed to St. Mary's, Georgia. St. Mary's, Georgia, where we got a family reunion together. And actually, Brett, I'm getting a call here, so if you'll give me a second, I need to take this.
Okay.
Hey, Beau.
Hi, this is Beau.
This is Beau.
Whoa. I think I know who this is. Do you remember Beau Burton from Pickleball?
Of course.
I think that's who this is. All right.
Is he on hold?
Well, I told him to hold on just 1 second. Beau, you're on here with Brett and I. What do you have to say?
I just wanted to say I hope you're still playing pickleball and not podcasting too much.
That's awkward, brother, because we are podcasting right now.
Because I'm getting real good, and I can't wait to come back and whoop up on you. Or at least play with you and whoop up on some other people next year when I'm in Gainesville. Also, I'm going to see you at Savage Race. I'll get to you the info soon.
Well, that's pretty exciting, Beau. Thanks for sharing that. One, I love pickleball, brother, and you know I do, and you know you cannot beat me at it, but there is always the hope. But I would love to gather with you and whoop up on some other people. But we've talked about the Savage Race, and Brett and I have talked about the Savage Race. And Brett, what do you have to say about the Savage Race?
Well, it's in, I believe, early November. I don't remember the exact date, but Beau keeps my calendar, as well as his sister. So really the two of them are kind of make these decisions for me. But yeah, I'm excited to go. I've never met you before. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty pumped. I've done a Tough Mudder. Understand this is supposed to be better than the Tough Mudder because it's a Savage Race. So I'm pretty stoked about it.
That is my understanding as well. And who knows, man? We may volunteer over there. We may get to meet some cool people, but we will for sure be running it. And it's going to be pretty exciting. And we're going to see you there, Beau. So I really look forward to seeing you there, seeing you on the pickleball courts, and talking to you soon. All right, my man, you take care of yourself now. Man, how awesome was that?
Pretty special. I mean, the fact that he said, "Hope you're not podcasting too much," and he calls you right in the middle of a podcast is pretty hilarious. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. And I mean, our listeners can call us too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anytime.
And anytime. And you can call us and get out your notepads, or tell Siri to start recording, because we have a phone number, the Quite Frankly hotline. It's 352-639-0557. Again, that's 352-639-0557. And I would really only encourage you to call if you desire deep and generous love, or if you're on the edge of that.
I think my goal is eventually I hope our hotline becomes so big that we can kind of do sort of a Dave Ramsey intro to the show, you know, where we have these mantras that we can quote, you know, coming at you from the, you know, I don't even know what's a company. Coming at you from the Patty Cake Studio, it's the Quite Frankly Show. And then we do our mantras, our little quotes. You know, the lines are live at whatever the number is. I think that would be fun. Do a little live event.
Oh, absolutely. And to be quite frank with you, we're going to need a lot more subscribers so we can fund renting out such a venue.
Right. I do want to I want to go back to your cyst issue on your back. I didn't get a chance to really touch on that. Could you tell us what the contents of the cyst was? Because as you've previously shared with me, you know, you've had several cysts removed in your life previously. And according to I don't know if it's the same dermatologist or a previous one, but supposedly cysts only contain two different ingredients, and it's a one or the other type situation, right? It's either pus or it's cheese, for lack of better terms, right? So could you advise, I know you had one on your neck and one in your back, if one or both of them were cheese filled or pus filled, or what that looked like?
Yeah, that's a great and uncomfortable question, but I'll still answer it because of the spirit and posture of vulnerability. Number one, I do need to correct you because you said I had many of cysts removed. That is incorrect. I've had one cyst removed previously before this recent experience. And I don't say that because I believe people should be ashamed of themselves if they have multiple cysts. I just don't want this podcast to be a source of misinformation in the world. And I will say that one you've had and seen was cheese filled. Now, secondly, you mentioned that cysts contain pus or cheese. Those are the two options. I would like to add a third constant, and I would say blood. With any breaking of the skin, you will often find blood involved. Unless you have a serious problem, then I would go see another doctor that's not the dermatologist. Onward. My back, again, I haven't confirmed, but I will say on my back, they had to pop it. And when I hear pop, I think pus.
Pus vibes, yeah.
But again, I was numb. I didn't feel anything other than little pressure. But I do know that the
wallering,
the jackhammer in my back did not produce the results that were desired. But I also will share the way it was described to me is a cyst actually doesn't consist of anything. A cyst is like that of a pimple, that it's actually under the skin. What's on top of it is what has stuff in it. But to remove a cyst is actually an item. It's not filled with anything. Cyst is a blockage. So they remove the blockage. But in between the blockage and the skin is your cheese or pus, and for certain blood. That's my understanding. But again, I have not researched this. I've just gone off of what the dermatologist was saying.
Gotcha. And your neck was, I'm assuming, cheese? You said they had to use like an ice cream scooper to get it out, right?
I assumed cheese because my other neck was cheese. And so that's all I'm going off of.
Gotcha. Well,
I do know they were benign.
Which is really the most important thing, right?
Correct. And you can live with cysts. People live with cysts all the time. It's no problem.
Oh yeah, it's like goiters. People live with those all the time.
Yeah, or bunions. Some people live with bunions all the time. Many
and
people.
Cons.
Do people have cons?
They do. Some people do.
What
I'm
is
not going
a
to name
con?
any names, but cone.
What is a cone?
I think it's like a bunion, but it goes way deeper. Like it goes maybe to the bone all the way, which is crazy.
The human body is fascinating. And just this conversation in and of itself is kind of telling us why I didn't enter the medical field, because one, I don't really enjoy talking about all these things. Other than I like talking about how your body is impacted of certain things. Like I would enjoy talking about how does a cyst occur. I don't necessarily.
How do I remove a cyst?
Yeah. Now I'm more interested in why do these things exist, other than that body ailments are a product of sin in the world. Because I'll tell you, in the new heaven and new earth, there will be no ailments. There will be no pain or suffering.
It's true. It's definitely true. And no cysts for you, especially. Hopefully, hopefully there's no more cysts in your future, but maybe you'll come to grips with, at that point, you could say my many previous cysts, because you'll have had 3 removed before that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I don't really know anybody who hasn't had a cyst. And if they say they haven't, I don't know if they're telling the truth. It's just something that happens.
I've got one that's like a 1/4 inch right here on the back of my skull, and I've been meaning to get it cut out, but
you might want to make sure that's not a tumor of the brain.
Oh, don't say that. It's on top.
Well,
it's on top of the skull.
Yeah,
I can feel it kind of rolling around back there. So
it'd be pretty deep. It'd be a pretty impressive bump there if it was actually in your brain.
Right.
You might make a record there for the world. But yeah, I mean, it's just a blockage of pores. It happens to everybody, especially in the south, close to the equator, because it's hot and you sweat. Your pores get oily, and when you get oily, your pores block. That's the dermatologist talking. So maybe it's worth it. You go get that thing cut out, you get a dermatology class for the price of whatever your insurance makes you pay.
Right. Yeah, I have to go see what's covered if we have cyst removal listed out in our qualifications. But yeah.
Yeah. But I will tell you, you have been a major blessing because you dressed my wounds as we previously discussed, and they put stitches inside me, and you covered them. And that was this past weekend at the Martin family reunion, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it, kind of what your thoughts were on all we did. What are some things that stood out to you, etc.?
Well, some things that stood out to me. We got there. I think we got there a little bit after you. We got there at 7. I think you got there maybe a little bit before us. And so, one of the first thing I noticed was, hey, Beau's got a big old Band-Aid on the back of his neck, and a bunch of stitches. So that was one thing I noticed. What did we do that night? We had, they had made homemade pizzas. And so I come in, I hadn't even said hello to everybody. I've got 2 slices of pizza on my plate, which is kind of how I roll, Hey. So, said hey to the patriarchs and the matriarchs, if you will. Pay my dues, so to speak. And then I grabbed some pizza and immediately try to find, somebody a little closer to my age. So I find you, I find Jackson and Julia. I find old Roo Dog. Big shout out. I'd say he's probably the most faithful listener of our podcast. So
I would not say probably. I would say almost certainly. I mean, he could have. I don't. You may agree or disagree, but I believe he could have. He could tell you what we said. He could tell you the day we said it, and the episode title. I mean, it was impressive.
His mind is a steel trap for sure. When he saw Julia, he said, "Oh my goodness, it's Julia from the podcast." So that was pretty hilarious. And people were like, "Julia, I didn't know you have a podcast." People that don't listen to ours. He was like, no. So that was fun. And I'm trying to think, Stetson, he does pretty good at these events because there's a lot of kids running around. He loves to run around and, the older kids are probably late elementary school and he's 6-7 years younger than them. So he thinks he's playing with them, but they're just playing and he's just running around, just having a blast. They could be doing anything and he's just running circles around them, just, hey, yeah, we're all having fun type deal. So I love that about him, that he's just, willing to jump in and have so much fun with them. But it also means he's going to be going to bed a lot later than he typically would. So that first night we got some pizza. Like I said, we got there at 7:15. The boys usually in bed at 7. So we're already running way behind. We stay for dessert, hang out a little bit, chat, and then I'm like, look, we got to get this boy back to the cabin because it's 9:00 and we got to get him in bed or else it's going to be ugly. So we go to these cabins and it's at the Crooked River State Park. And I've never seen a river that's straight, now that I think about it. So the fact that they were able to claim that their river is the most crooked is pretty impressive. And it seems like they're, financially they're doing pretty well based off that. But we go through and we stay at this cabin. Last year we had a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. This year we were upgraded to, it was a palace. By every definition of the word, it was a palace. 3 bedrooms. I think there was a total of 5 beds and the couch pulled out. Big kitchen. For a state park, this is the nicest cabin I've ever stayed in at a state park for sure. So the first night, we put Stetson down. He's sleeping in the bathroom because we can shut the door turn on the sound machine and kind of, not drown him out, but he won't be woken up by us yelling, screaming at each other, arguing, stuff like that. So that was the first night, and I think we were all just so tired from traveling that it was pretty tame. We got up the next morning. I think I got up at 6:30 maybe, and you said, "Look, I want to." The plan was to go play pickleball that morning. You said, "I don't want to set an alarm. I want you to come in my room and wake me up." So I got up at 6:30. Went and stretched out, brushed my teeth, got dressed, popped in there, maybe 10 minutes before we had to leave and said, "Hey, wake up. We got to be on the road in 5 minutes." So I don't know if you appreciated that or if you would have liked me to wake you up earlier, but you left it all in my hands, and that was your fault.
Well, one, my phone was dead, so I didn't have a charger, and I didn't really want to charge my phone. I kind of wanted to keep it off. So it was selfish, I'll be honest with you. So I appreciate you walking in my room. Number two, I was actually awake because I arose with the sunrise because I left the blinds open in the room, which if you're about safety, I would not suggest. But if you're about beauty, I would suggest, because waking up with the sun is nothing. You can't beat it. But at the same time, I enjoyed, with my eyes closed, the sunrise at some points, because I woke up with the sun. I went to the restroom. I went straight back to bed. I said, you know what'll prepare me for pickleball? A little episode of Shut Eye.
That's right.
And then next thing I know, you're in the room, and I say, hi there. And you say, time to go.
I will say, I heard someone get up and use the bathroom because we have a shared wall right there next to where the toilet is. Frankly, it's right across the wall there. So I hear, the door opens, it shuts. I hear a little trickle, like, okay, someone's going to the bathroom, no big deal. And this is before my alarm went off. So I'm, putting two together. This is probably you. And then I hear, I was like, oh my gosh, dude. We're in a cabin here with like 8 folks, and he's just cracking the loudest rats possible at 6:15. That is rank. But look, it's a free country. You can do whatever you want. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We got up, we played pickleball. The Freelands were there. Steven and his young son, I like to call him Gus sometimes. His name is Wes. They were there as well. He bought some nice pickleball paddles. I'll say that. I heard he got them BOGO. I don't know if I believe him or not, though. I think they were, what was the brand? Was it Julep?
Jula, which is the premier pickleball paddle. Right. It's what the number one pickleballer in the world uses.
So, Jackson, the whole time we're playing, he's like, oh, my paddle. And he knew that Steven had the Jula. And there was an extra one in his bag. I was like, dude, enough of the complaints. Just go grab the Jula. And he gets it, and, me and you ended up facing off against him and Steven. So we've got me using a paddle. I don't even know the brand. I'm assuming it was an okay brand. It doesn't really matter when it's in my hands. And then I know you just got a new paddle as well. What was the brand? Give a little shout out on your paddle.
I actually don't know the brand. It's like CZR. It's kind of Czech Republican, but it was a gift. It was a beautiful gift, and it's a major upgrade from the paddle I had been using for the past 4 years that was now broken and cracked in half. But I kept it and still played with it because that thing has been through a lot, and it can tell a serious story. Much like the fracture in my knee, it could tell a serious story. That paddle, the character behind it is just absolutely remarkable. And the hands that have touched it, I mean, that paddle has seen some palms, and they're not just mine.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty deep. Pretty deep.
Yeah.
A palm reader, if you
Yeah.
will. Either way, whether we know the brand of the paddles or not, all that we need to know is that me and you put an absolute smackdown on those boys with the Jula paddles. I'm like, dude, you can have a $200 paddle all you want, but I'm going to just hit the ball to the other side. That's my goal. And whenever they hit it to Beau, he's gonna deliver the finisher, you know? So that was kind of my tactic. Look, just return the ball. Return the ball to the other side. Hope they hit it to Beau. When they do, you hit them with a little slice, dice, chip, dink, whatever they call it. And we ended up winning. I don't remember what the score was, but it was a
11
beatdown.
to 3.
Yeah, of epic proportions. So,
And that was a second annual Martin Family Pickleball Pro-Am, as Blake called it.
right.
And I like it.
Yeah, and Steven was like, man, Jackson, we played together last year. And he goes, every year we're on the same team, and without fail, we lose. I was like, bro, we did this for the first time last year. He's like, without fail, we lose every year. Like, this is the second year. So that was pretty funny. But, yeah, it's all, it's just so good to get out. We beat the senior citizens there. I think there was maybe one court being used whenever we got there at like 7:30. And then by the time we were ready to leave, the court was getting packed. I was like, man, I didn't know pickleball was so big down here in South Georgia, but apparently it's nationwide. So that was a fun time. Get a little sweaty, get a little cardio in, exercise the competitive spirit a bit. And then after that, you go and rinse off at the cabin, get cooled down a little bit, drink a tall glass of water, and then you walk back into this house. And when you walk in, you see several things, really. You see eggs, grits, biscuits, chocolate gravy, sausage gravy, multiple jellies. And I'm not talking about sea jellies. I'm talking jams, jellies, preserves. You know what I mean?
Skins, gems, and crims.
Skins, gems, and crims, and marmalades alike. And so we go in, and at this point, we probably got there at maybe 10 o'clock. We were late for breakfast, realistically. Everyone had already eaten, but that's the beauty of batting cleanup. You're like, look, there's 30 biscuits left. Everyone's already gone through the line. This is a judgment-free zone. You know what I mean? If you go last, that's a serious value. It's a gamble for sure if there's not enough food. Because if there's not enough food, you're like, look, man, I'm just scraping the bottom of the barrel here. You never know what you're going to get. But at these functions, there's always more food. So we come in, slap 4 or 5 biscuits on the plate, just get ladle after ladle of different gravy types. They're all running together. Slop a giant thing of grits on top. It's unbeatable. It's incredible. We had sausage as well. Only qualm, no Kaneka. But look, I'm not going to complain because I didn't cook any of it, and I have no right. And then after that, we got in the pool after that. We go and we eat breakfast, we hang out. I laid down on the couch, I'm not going to lie. You exercise.
Watch the British Open.
Watch the British Open. You exercise, you eat all this food, and then you go and you lay on the couch, a nice cold leather couch. It's a feeling unlike any other. I did go on a little coffee run to Starbucks. There's like a Starbucks, I don't know, 12, 15 minutes away. And I was like, look, there's a lot of noise around this house. Jackson, Julia, they wanted some coffee. So I said, look, I'll go, I'll take one for the team. I'll go get some coffee. I try to do a pre-order. Guess what? Apparently, the internet was broken that day, and I had no clue. Molly was like, yeah, it's all over social media. I'm like, yeah, I hardly use the internet, I'm a caveman. What do I know? So I tried to use the app, and, it was down because the entire internet was broken, essentially. So I had to go in like a peasant, wait in line, order, wait for them to make my drinks. It was really, it makes you very appreciative for the luxuries we have in this country with mobile ordering, there's all sorts of luxuries when we have these apps. You've got rewards, you can scan. Hey, take all my money. Just scan this app. You can have my credit card. Just keep it, Starbucks, So it's pretty nice to have the app, but when the internet's broken, obviously that's it's no good. It's no good. Came back after that and chilled in the pool. I was wearing a bucket hat the whole time. Maybe that's why I didn't get any. That's why the service was so bad at Starbucks. They weren't taking me seriously because I had a Worldwide Sportsman bucket hat on. They're like, dude, you look like you just got back from deep sea fishing. I'm like, I just want some caffeine. That's what I want. So I wore that bucket hat pretty much all day, and it was just so nice. Cold drink, nice cool pool, bucket hat, sun shining down on you. It's just it's a beautiful summer story,
It really is.
Don't yawn number 4. This is unbelievable. Is my story not entertaining you enough?
No, it is. And that's the problem, because I was in Jacob Kling's car on Wednesday, and I yawned no less than 8 times in the span of 10 minutes from West Side to Walmart. And I told him, man, I said, my brother, I have no idea what's going on. But it was actually pitiful. I was ashamed.
And you should be. I feel like there's a way you can tell if you really value somebody's time and somebody's engagement in a conversation by not yawning. I feel like that's the least you can do.
I think yawning is the most discouraging thing that you can perceive from someone in a conversation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I want you, I'm so engaged. I really am.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I really am. I'm like the most engaged person.
I know you are. Well, I'll try to spice up the story. So we were in the pool, and I drowned and died. That wake you up? That catch your interest? Don't even, dude. Don't even. I did not drown. I sat in the pool. I chillaxed. The kids had a cannonball competition, which is always fun to watch because they're all like 40 pounds. They're trying to do these big splashes, and they just can't. They don't have the mass. They don't have the density, And then Jackson gets up there and takes the cake. Always takes the cake. Him and Steven.
Jackson and Steven did one holding hands.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And that was a moment of beautiful things.
That's unity right there. And then that night, you get dried off. Everybody's getting hungry again. And somebody brings out these frozen shrimp. And that somebody is Dale Williams. And he starts telling me this story. He's like, hey, you want to know where I got this shrimp? And I've heard that before from some other people. And if anybody ever kind of walks up to you and gets really close to you and kind of softly says, hey, you want to know where I got this frozen shrimp? You better lean in and say, please tell me, because it's going to be an incredible story every time. He says, he worked for the sheriff. So he carries all sorts of weapons. He is, by all accounts, the long arm of the law. He says, look, we had this Walmart truck tip over right there by the St. Mary's exit. He's like, I pulled up, me and some of my sheriff buddies. And they said, look, we can't sell this shrimp, He was like, it was like 800 pounds of frozen shrimp. So he says, look, I loaded up the back of my truck. I've been handing out frozen shrimp to all my friends and family the past week. I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, dang, Santa Claus. The Santa Claus of South Georgia handing out frozen dang shrimp from a toppled Walmart truck. I don't think it's illegal for me to be saying that. I don't think what he did was illegal. It's not stealing. They couldn't sell it. So what? He loaded up on 200 pounds of frozen shrimp. We definitely benefited from it. All that being said, we had what they call a low country boil. Where I'm from, we just call it a low boil. We take out country. It's, presumed, I guess is a word you could say. So we had a low boil. It had corn on the cob, not corn on the foot, like we talked about earlier. It had little taters, I don't know what they call them, fingerling taters, possibly. Baby taters. We had the Walmart shrimp, the toppled side of the road shrimp, and we also had some sausage. Once again, not Kaneka, but not my place. And then in a separate box, we had some shrimp that were getting ready for the deep fryer, which always excites me because it's so dang poppable. So, of course, I go and hang out in the garage where they're frying the shrimp. And I say, look, guys, I'm just out here, do a little QC, QA, make sure we're all right. I can help sprinkle some salt once they come out, make sure they're cooked all the way through. And so me and you and Andrew, we kind of stood outside while the shrimp were being fried. We certainly stole several shrimp straight out of the grease. They were incredible. And we also reloaded a few shotgun shells as well. So a little bit of free labor, tried to help fill up a box of shells. And at the same time, we had gunpowder on our hands, lead. We're going and grabbing shrimp out of the community bowl of fried shrimp. We got freaking lead all over our fingers. Oh, this is delicious, Oh, this one could take a little more salt, But overall, it was
Put
it was an
gunpowder
incredible
in the
dinner.
fryer.
Right. Boom. But no, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that dinner because it was, the Friday night dinner is always the big shebang. It's like fireworks. You want to do good stuff the whole time, but right there at the end, that's the finale. You're saving it all up for that.
Yeah. I went heavy on the meats, man. I actually have a bit of an allergy to corn on the cob. And so I couldn't eat corn on the cob. Potatoes, I can eat potatoes, but why waste that space if the potatoes aren't at the top of my list? So I went fried shrimp, I went boiled shrimp, I went sausage. But even more than that, there were these Sam's Club frozen chicken nuggets.
Oh.
And
how could I forget?
They taste exactly like Chick-fil-A. So I had no less than probably 25 of those. And man, by the end of that meal, I was absolutely dead. But here's where things get a little hairy. Is I don't have that kind of food at my home. And to be quite frank, I don't want to spend the time cooking that kind of food at home because it takes a great amount of time. And that's just not time that I want to prioritize toward cooking at this point in my life. Not to say I never will, but again, at this point in my life. And so I'm trying to maximize all of it. So even though I'm pretty close to tapped out. Well, you gotta have a slice of cake at the end. And my father made a brand new praline cake. And it was just out of this world moist. The icing was absolutely perfect. It was not too rich. It was not too dense. It was just right. And the taste was not too rich and not too dense. It was precisely what the doctor had ordered. And so, baking is a science. It's chemistry. And the scientist was a master at work this weekend.
The alchemist, we call him.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was, and you had kind of the crumble, the praline crumble on top. And you got
with some
the icing.
caramel drizzle.
Right. And I think there was 3 layers to the cake. And in between each layer, you've got a little 1/4 inch, of the icing. So every single bite, you've got that icing. It was in there just thicker than a Snicker. You know what I'm saying? Incredible cake. I think they also had some peach cobbler. I did not get any of the peach cobbler.
I did.
I was washing dishes, dude, like Jack Johnson. I was in there washing dishes, and they ate all the Bluebell. So I said, look, I'm not about to just have peach cobbler by itself. I'm sure it's great, but for my sake and my health, I just ate 20 pounds of fried shrimp. Probably don't need the peach cobbler.
Well, you could have soaked. Here's a hack: put the peach cobbler in a bowl and pour whole milk on top of it,
and then stick it in the refrigerator. Or
if you don't have ice cream, that is. No, just eat it right then and there. It's instead of having a glass of milk, you just have a bowl of milk with the peach cobbler in it.
Oh man, you're just melting the ice cream. That's all you're doing by pouring the milk on it. You're like, hey, this ice cream is going to melt pretty quick anyways. I'll just pour milk on it instead. That's what you're saying.
Less sugar, more natural.
More protein, probably.
More protein. Honestly, if you think about it, because the peach cobbler is so hot, well, how do you make hot chocolate? Maybe you'd have hot peach cobbler instead.
That's a great
You're basically
point.
mixing that cobbler into the milk. There's an idea.
Point. Yeah. And this whole time, you got to think as well to kind of paint the picture. The whole time we're over at this house, there's cookies that are not pre-made, but like they were made earlier in the week. So there's just Tupperwares full of cookies. There's chips. There's queso, salsa, corn dip, dadgummit. And so the whole time you're there, every time you pop through the kitchen, you got to get a chip of the corn dip. You got to get, just got to settle the palate out a little bit and get some queso. That's what I tell myself, at least. No, I've been having a lot of sugar. I need some salsa to kind of bounce it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, in the outdoors, there was a 20-gallon tub of children's snacks that included Rice Krispies, granola bars, Goldfish, Cheez-Its. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't partake in a few myself. To get a 25-gallon tub down to the last bones, you need to be a group effort and be unified in a desire to empty the proverbial tank. And so I tried to do my part, but each time I walked out there, I'm telling you, man, let me grab a little treat.
That's the way to do it. I'll tell you what, that night we, once we made it back to the cabin, I think Molly and your mother and Stetson all went back to the cabin, maybe around 8:30. So I think you got in bed a little bit earlier the second night. I could be way off there. And there is no concept of time over there. It could be 1 in the afternoon. It could be 10 p.m. I have no clue. You know what I mean? I'm just eating. I'm in this, I don't know, this cycle where nothing makes sense, but everything makes sense at the same time. So they took Stetson back to the cabin, got him in bed. Me, you, Jackson, and Julia, we stayed behind a little bit, went back to the cabin, and played some Mario Monopoly. And for all you folks out there who have never played Mario Monopoly, it is a treasure. It is so good. After about an hour and a half, we were nowhere close to finishing the game. Jackson had really the majority of the properties. He had a lot of the cash because he was making rent off of pretty much every single roll. And he was just throwing cash at us buying properties. Like it was, he was like BlackRock or something like that. He was super big. So, but really at one point you said, look guys, I can't go on. And you went to bed. And so we dubbed Jackson the winner and cleaned everything up and went to bed. But it wasn't even that late. I think it was 11:50, something like that. But I guess you were just tuckered out from the activities of the day.
Yeah, I was at the end of the rope. I think that's the saying, is the others say I needed to catch the new episode of Shut Eye. They dropped a new episode and I didn't want to miss it.
Makes sense. The next morning was, it's always kind of sad that last morning because it's like breakfast and then you have to leave, So we got to the house. There's cinnamon rolls there. There's leftover biscuits and gravy from the day before. Y'all number 6 incoming from Beau for all of our listening and audio only listeners. And then we headed back to Gainesville. We were going to spend, the rest of Saturday with you guys in Gainesville and also Sunday. So Saturday we get back to Gainesville. We run over to Patty Cakes and meet Josiah Poole, who is also an incredibly loyal listener to the podcast, also a subscriber. Shout out JP, some folks call him. And then that night we went to Chewy's. Oh, as if we hadn't eaten enough the 3 days before. We went to Chewy's and eat burritos, chips, creamy peen, jalapeno.
Creamy jalapeno.
That's right. I'm trying to think if we did anything else that night. It was pretty chill. And this morning, got up, went to church, met some more friends for lunch. We tried to do Sonny's, but unfortunately, Sonny's had like an hour-long wait. So we ended up going to a Mexican restaurant. So 2 meals in a row on the Mexican. Jesse Kabawi said, look, yesterday you had Tex-Mex. Today you're having Mex-Mex. So really wasn't that different, but that's kind of where we stood on the day. And then me and Molly and Stetson headed back down south to our sweet townhouse.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it was absolutely phenomenal to have y'all here in Gainesville for the night and day. But I will share. Shout out to Abby Williams and Ashley Engel, because they are now following the Quite Frankly podcast on the social platforms. And I think now I don't have the gift of prophecy. I don't think I do, at least. It hasn't been discovered by me yet. But I will say I'm sensing a note of loyalty incoming from them. I'll just say that much. I think they are two people committed to deep and generous love for their communities. And I just want to encourage them to continue along that journey and that path.
Yeah, for sure. I forgot to mention, there was one family member in particular who I feel like needs a pretty big shout out. And that is Kathy. We call her, some people call her Mama Kathy. Some people call her Khaki.
Some people call her Cack.
That's right.
So others call her Cack-a-doodle-doo.
That is correct. But she has...
And then the others call her Cackaroni.
Cackaroni and cheese. That's right. I thought you were going to try to cut me off there.
No.
They call her Khaki, not because they can't pronounce Kathy. Some people might think that. But it's because she used to work for the mail service, the postal service, the U.S. Postal Service. And she wore the ones, those safari hats that the OG postmen and women used to wear, and it was made of khaki fabric. And so I think whenever they stopped wearing the safari hats, that's when the postal service workers really went downhill. And she is the last of the real ones. So she has not subscribed to the podcast, but she is following us currently, I believe. And so, be on the lookout. She says she's going to try to subscribe. She's trying to give us her money. So she said, look for an email from BSC25 at AOL. So we're on the look for it. Whenever it comes through, we'll give you another shout out. But she put a lot of effort. Her credit card wasn't, she was in another state, so her credit card was barring her from subscribing. But she tried for a solid 30 minutes, and I can't commend her enough for that.
Well, and I tell you, she created 3 different accounts, and the BSC was the one that really stuck. But she went as far to call her bank and say, look, guys, we need to get this through. We need to get it through pronto. Now, the problem with Khaki and her BSC account is obviously the bank. That her bank account was not the same as the BSC account. And so there were some real logistical problems going on, but they got that worked out. And then we discover what the problem really takes us back to that Friday when the internet shut down. Well, quite frankly, is a part of the Microsoft
Team
umbrella, the sub category of Microsoft that had a glitch in the system. And so when people tried to submit payments, they were not going through, and it just wasn't pretty. It was not pretty at all. And so just as the flights have been affected and afflicted for that matter, the Quite Frankly podcast subscriber purchasing option has had some trouble, but we should be getting it on the straight and narrow here soon. We are dependent on our Microsoft engineers. Rodrigo has been in contact with them, and he specifically requested to get the BSC lady through immediately. And so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we're running a little long, but it was an incredible weekend. And I'd love to know what your song of the week was.
That's an awesome question. I'm going to go with Yahweh heart emoji. Nope, sorry. Yahweh, we heart emoji you. That is the actual song title. It doesn't say the words heart emoji. It's an actual heart emoji. But it's a great song, and it's about corporately gathering and proclaiming to the Lord that we love him. And seeing all the things that he is powerful, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, all the omnis he is. And it's just a good reminder of our posture and position to the Lord, is we are under him and we are at his feet. And at his feet, I've said this before and I believe it wholeheartedly, at his feet is way higher than what we should actually be. But what an honor to be at the feet of the Lord.
Amen to that. I didn't know emojis were being used in song titles now, so that's kind of fun.
It's pretty up and coming, cutting edge.
Yeah, apparently so, because I had never heard of it. I was just trying to imagine like AC/DC with a song title with an emoji in it, just be kind of funny. But my song of the week is "Be My Escape" by Relient K. Relient K, dude, they are just a blast from the past. Just so many years ago, they were really good. I mean, their music is still good. I've only just recently, maybe not rediscovered them, but there's been a rekindling of sorts. So I'm excited to get back on that train a little bit. And "Be My Escape" was one of the ones that really stuck with me. So
excellent. Well, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think we can all take a lesson from Kaki, and just the drive and the go-getter attitude that she has to subscribing for this podcast. I hope that there's more folks out there that maybe you're on the edge. They're like, maybe should I do it? Should I not? And hopefully you can look at that story and say, wow, I should do it. So, also we'd really like to know if if the system is back up and running again. So that'd be a great way to test that. But yeah, that's all I've got to say. Please, I won't say give us your money. We don't want your money. It's just a byproduct, right? We want to be able to get you great content that we privatize, if you will, so that you can give us money for it.
Yeah, and what an opportunity you, the listener, have to do that. And review us. Tell your friends. Word of mouth is the most powerful marketing tool, and that's really what we rely on you to share the mission and the existence of the Quite Frankly podcast. And we are so thankful for those of you who devote an hour each week to listen. It's not lost on us. It's actually quite humbling that the God of the universe would use us in such a way to make an impact in your life. And that's honestly, that doesn't even surpass or even come close to the amount that you've impacted our lives by your support. And so we appreciate you greatly, and we love you deeply and generously. And we're going to see you in 7 days.